Chapter 4. Early one morning, the geese sleeping out on the ice on Lake Vom were awoken by loud cries from the air. Treop, treop! Trenut, the crane, greets Aka to say that tomorrow the great crane dance is to be held on Kullaberg. Welcome! The wild geese were very pleased. You're lucky to be able to see the crane dance, they told the gander. Is it so remarkable? Said Martin. It's what you've never even dreamt of, the wild geese replied. But first we must go and get some food, said Aka. They flew to the marshlands south of Glimminghouse. The old stone fortress was so high and vast that it could be seen for miles around on the plain, and a stork had built its nest on the very top of its ridged roof. When the wild geese had had their fill of meadow grass, they flew straight to the assembly of animals and the crane dance. Kullaberg was a long, low mountain that had rushed out into the sea as far as it could get, its steep cliffs richly sculpted by water and wind, and on the flat mountain top were forests and fields, heather-covered heathlands and bare stone. Since time immemorial, the creatures had gathered there every year on a playground well hidden behind hills and hillocks. Each species of animal kept to its own hill, although, of course, peace reigned among them all during the assembly. On that day, a little hare could walk over the fox's hill without losing as much as one of its long ears. The boy let his gaze roam from hill to hill. On one he could see the many spiked antlers of the deer, on another the crests on the heads of the gray herons. One hill was red with foxes, another black and white with seabirds, and another brown with hares. The sun rose, a cloud appearing in the sky above the playground, and suddenly the whole sky began twittering and singing, as if consisting of nothing but notes. In the end, the whole singing cloud came down onto a hill that became completely covered with gray larks, colorful red, gray, and white chaffinches, speckled starlings, and green and yellow titmice. After them came a great heavy bluish-gray cloud no ray of sun could penetrate. Gloomy and frightening it was, and full of cries and noises, mocking laughter, and the most ominous cawing. Everyone was glad when the cloud at last dissolved into a shower of crows and jackdaws, ravens and rooks. The games soon began. 100 capercaillies in bright black and brown attire and bright red eyes hurled up into a large oak tree. They raised their tails to show their white protective feathers, and deep down in their throats began gurgling. Tick up, they went, then sis, sis, sis. Listen, so lovely it is, sis, sis. They all went into raptures, beside themselves, and their ecstasy also seemed to infect all the other animals. Just as the black cocks with their beautifully curved tail feathers rushed out onto the playground to compete with the capercaillies, something terrible happened. A fox came creeping quite slowly up onto the wild geese's hill. He was walking very carefully and was quite far up the slope before anyone noticed. But then a goose spotted him, and as she couldn't believe a fox had crept in among the geese with any good intentions, she started calling, "Watch out, wild geese, watch out!" The fox grabbed her by the neck, perhaps largely to quieten her, but the wild geese had already heard her and flew high up into the air. From up there they saw Smirre the fox on their hill with a dead goose in his mouth. But Smirre had shattered the peace of the day, and for that he was duly punished. He was at once surrounded by a crowd of foxes and sentenced according to ancient custom. Whoever disturbs the peace on the great day of games must go into exile. For the rest of his life he would regret he had been unable to leave Aka and her flock alone. So Smirri was forbidden to stay in Skane, and was banished from his wife and family, from his hunting grounds, his resting places and hiding places, and had to try his luck in foreign parts. And so that all foxes in Skane should know that Smirri was outlawed from the countryside, the eldest of the foxes bit off the tip of his right ear. As soon as this was done, the young foxes threw themselves at Smirri, and all he could do was flee. So with all the young foxes at his heels, he fled away from Kullaberg. At that moment, a whisper ran from hill to hill. "Look, the cranes are coming." Then came the gray twilight-clad birds, with their plumed wings and red feathered jewels on their heads. Long-legged, with slender necks and small heads, they glided down the slope, half flying, half dancing, moving with unimaginable speed and delight, as if the gray shadows were playing a game the eye was scarcely able to follow, as if they had learned from the mists that hover over solitary mosses. There was magic in it, and all those who had not been to Kullaberg before realized just why the whole assembly bore the name of the Dance of the Cranes. There was wildness in it, but the feeling it gave rise to was still a wonderful yearning. No one gave a thought to fighting any more. Instead, they all wanted to rise up above the clouds and float towards the supernatural, leaving their heavy bodies that dragged them down to earth. The animals felt this yearning for the unattainable only once a year, and that was the day when they saw the great dance of the cranes.